Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. During this season of Tent Talk, we're bringing you episodes about growing where you're planted, maximizing the success and impact of your market or market business by focusing on your own resources and the power of the farmers market community.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Square, helping small farmers, food makers, crafters, and market managers increase their incomes by making it easy to process credit and debit card sales on the street and in the tents. We use Square ourselves, both for selling shopping bags and t-shirts at our market info booths and for invoicing farmers and vendors online for space fees. The income you generate appears promptly in your bank account without spending time or money on end-of-day closeouts. Square's user-friendly system makes it easy to track inventory and payroll and generate clear reports. For more information on reducing stress and increasing your income with Square, click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. We're talking in this newest season about growing where we're planted. That means making use of the resources within our own organizations and community, using existing coalitions and developing new ones to help our markets and businesses thrive and grow.
Today we're chatting with Amanda Edmonds, longtime food systems expert and advocate, and now with the University of Michigan, about the 2026 National Farmers Market Survey, opening this month. If you attended last year's Intense Conference, you'll remember Amanda's fast-paced and very informative presentation on working with your local municipalities to improve markets. She'll be back with us at the conference a month from now. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. Can you give us just the very quickest recap of your experience around farmers markets, just for listeners who don't know who we're talking to today?
Sure. I've been working in sustainable food systems for 25 years now, and the first 15, 17 of that was a nonprofit that I started and ran that did many things in food systems, including running farmers markets. So I started being on the ground, in the ground. We were the third market in the state of Michigan, in Ypsilanti, Michigan, at Growing Hope to accept SNAP. So as part of that trajectory from the beginning, so I have a lot of years with what it takes to actually run a market. And since then have been a consultant in the farmers market sector, doing national work with the Farmers Market Coalition, particularly in market evaluation. And right now as a consultant with the Michigan State University Extension on this project we'll talk about.
So your primary area of focus currently is the survey work, and you have a new position too at the University of Michigan, correct?
Yeah, actually, this just January 1st, I have joined the University of Michigan's faculty in the program and in the environment, teaching sustainable food systems, teaching food policy, broader food systems, et cetera, and helping to run the university's Sustainable Food System Initiative as the lead faculty.
That's awesome. Wow. And Amanda was also the mayor of Ypsilanti at one point, right?
I was the mayor of Ypsilanti for 4 years, yes.
She's hitting all the buttons.
What a lucky community to just have this treasure trove amongst them.
Okay, so today we're talking about the National Farmers Market Survey. How often is that conducted?
It's roughly every 5 years. Now, this is a USDA survey, but is most often, in every 5 years or so, conducted by an educational institution. In particular, Michigan State has done it many times, who's the one who really owns the research, owns the data, et cetera. So MSU contracts to someone else. So it's happening a number of times over the years. Every 5-ish years, so to speak. So we're excited for this next one coming up in the first quarter of 2026.
Awesome. And then for the purpose of the survey, how is a farmer's market defined?
Yeah, we worked really hard on that to be inclusive of what we consider a market, which is a place where two or more producers, one of which at minimum needs to be an agricultural producer, are selling local, generally handmade, hand-raised, hand-produced goods directly to the consumer at a fixed location that is recurring. So what that means is that in many places, people will require it's more than one, say, agricultural producer. But that actually is exclusive in some parts of our country, Alaska, many places where there's really, really small markets that are very much farmers markets, what many of us think of as markets, but are anchored by one farmer. And then they have their bread maker and their jam maker and those other folks. So at least 2 folks. So that differentiates it also from a farm stand, right? A farm stand that is one producer selling their things directly to consumers. This is about that collection of producers, agricultural and otherwise, selling locally produced product to consumers.
Great. That's a nice way to dial it in, I think, for sure. And then how is the survey created and kind of like who designed the questions for the survey?
Yeah, the team at Michigan State designed the questions, of course, looking at the previous questions and the last iteration of the survey, which was from 2019, but updating them to be more accurate and responsive to the sector and the words the sector uses, the words farmers markets use. That's why this is the first time actually in this history of these USDA surveys that they've actually brought on people of expertise in the farmers market sector to advise the team. So myself and many people will know Dar Wolnick, she's also in a consulting role in this project, have been giving a lot of input to the research team about how to make sure that these questions and what we're going to be able to get back is both relevant to how we talk about things in our sector and responsive to what we as a sector want to know.
Exactly. So like what do you all feel like? Why is it important to collect this information? Like what's the goal of collecting all this important information? Sounds like you're doing your due diligence, setting up the questions, but what's the end result? Like what's the purpose of that?
For me, as someone who works in and with this farmers market sector, a main purpose is to inform the sector, right? Inform those markets, those state organizations, those national organizations, those who want to advocate for markets. Of course, it will inform USDA and hopefully inform future funding opportunities, et cetera. But it's that sort of baseline of what's happening. Who are we? How many of us are there? What sizes are we? How old are we? How do we operate? This is really mostly about the functioning of the market. This is not getting into a deep dive of what's happening with vendors, besides the number of vendors in a peak season, number of vendors through the whole year, et cetera. We can't say that by asking market managers and market organization staff those questions. We can understand the profile of a market and a market organization more broadly.
And I think that's helpful so that we know how we compare to other markets. Are we bigger? Are we smaller? Are we busier? Are there things we could aspire to maybe that other markets are doing?
Definitely. Yeah. Just kind of take a look at the information as a whole and not get too detailed in, because then you kind of lose some of that broader information that could be really helpful. Yeah, it sounds great. What is the timeline this year for your survey?
So the survey is launching in mid-February, and we'll have about 5 weeks. So before people get into the height of many folks' market season or even market start dates in some parts of the country. So it'll run through about the end of March. We're really excited that we are going to be able to have this data later this year. Sometimes one of the challenges with past surveys is there's been a big lag, like a year or so. And then how up to date is that? How much do we trust those results? Are they really still current enough? And so we'll get this data back, by about fall, we'll have results, and we'll have results hopefully at the level of every state. Whether a state level results, which is where I think they're actually most useful to have and to be able to compare, will depend on a response rate for a state. So we really need every state to get folks out taking the survey so they've got enough data so that it could be shared and still be, anonymized, et cetera. You can't know that like, oh, well, that's so-and-so market, right? Which we know in some of the states with smaller, fewer numbers of markets that can happen sometimes. So there is a statistical methodology to know what that number is. And we'll be actually able, once the survey goes, to share that number and share how states are doing to better sort of rally and champion and find new contacts in those states so that their response rates can get up to the point where that state's data is also shareable.
That's amazing that it'll be out so quickly. I mean, endless frustration when you go to look up a set of statistics and it says, well, here's this survey from 2017, and this is what's true now, which is not at all the case, especially as fast as the world keeps spinning lately, it feels like. So can everybody in the sector respond to the survey, or who are you looking to answer these questions?
Yeah, so this survey is at the market location level, right? In the sector, we might call a farmer's market organization, but that organization might run multiple markets. This is going to be specifically at the location level, and a market organization could take it for each and every one of the locations that they have. We'd love it if they did. There's sort of 2 groups. So there is a specific randomized sample from each state that takes into account the number of markets in the state, the geographies of the state that's been, scientifically selected. And they'll get a specific link to the survey, and certain analysis will be done from that randomized sample, and everyone who runs a market location can take it, and the more the merrier, and the better and stronger and more broadly representative data that we can get. And if someone doesn't know because they don't remember, they went into the survey and they're not sure about if they have the link, if they were in that other group, once you get in, it'll actually ask you, and they'll, the survey tool, which is all online, will know how to filter you into which group if you're in that randomized sample. Like I don't know, I'm not a researcher, I don't know what that list is, so I can't tell who's on which list, but people who are on that randomized sample list will get a specific postcard, a specific communications with a QR code. And we want everyone to take it because we will better know about our sector the more who take it. It only takes about 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, and it's going to be mostly information that you have at hand. It's not a deep dive. It's a profile.
So you don't need to have market data like finances or specific demographics or anything?
No, the survey designed specifically at the level of things someone would know largely off the top of their head. The exception to that, and we'll have a list. So before someone takes a survey, they can know what couple things might be helpful to pull up. Numbers of vendors in different sort of categories. So a vendor list, honestly, is the main thing to have. Number of market days, right? So someone could have counted. There is the ability, though, in the survey, if you don't finish it all and you don't need to go reference a piece of information, to come back to it. Save and return to it. And there's also going to be the ability to pass it on if someone else in your organization needs to answer. You realize, oh, wait, maybe I'm not the one who knows these things. But most of these things, the person who's a market manager or oversees, supervises a market manager would know these things. Because how are you organized? How are you incorporated? How many staff do you have? It's at that general level. So I think also that's something important in our current place and time is that MSU is the one protecting this data, right? Even though this is a USDA project, MSU is protecting the individual data and is the only one with that access. And it's almost all data that is publicly available somewhere, right? So we're not asking for salary info. We're not asking for that kind of thing that is proprietary, or some markets might put them on a radar of someone in a way in our current time and space that they're uncomfortable with. It is specifically not that. There is going to be, we're hoping, and there's a planning going on for an additional phase after the survey that would let people opt in at the end of the survey to a panel, so to speak. So basically, they're being willing to be contacted in future years to do some deeper dives into some of these topics that we want to know about, right? We want to know more about compensation. We want to know about market budgets, these sort of black boxes that are done so many different ways. They're kind of impossible to ask us like a single or a small set of survey questions about. And that will be for future research where there may be some different methodologies, a representative group of folks who volunteered from different types of markets or different scales of markets or different geographies will be brought together and asked if they want to participate in a deeper dive around some of these subjects that we know as a sector that we want to get deeper into. And I want to say also that Dara and I, as a sort of farmers market sector consulting team to this MSU team, are being advised by an amazing team of, I'm sure some of you listening, of 12 leaders from the sector, leaders of some of our state organizations, some flagship markets, are advising us. And that input actually has made its way into some key things like the definition of farmers markets, like some of the survey language, strategies for reaching people, building trust with the sector who has not always been a fan of the survey because of some missteps in previous iterations. So we're really grateful of a group of 12 of some of you listening who have been part of advising and will continue to be advising, including, I think, some of those next, what are those research questions? What are those deep dives that we really want? Should this future phases of the research happen after the survey?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And especially the note that this information will stay with MSU. I think right now there's a lot of concerns about privacy and people are very hesitant to answer questions, especially ones that appear to be connected to a government agency. It's
yeah. I mean, I won't see the raw data. Even though I'm on, the advising on this core team, because I'm not one of those PI researchers, et cetera. So they're very, very serious about that and very protective of that in the way that they should be.
That's great. So the USDA Farmers Market Directory is not known for being particularly up to date by those of us in the farmers market sector. It's kind of a sore point sometimes. Is the survey audience based on the directory? Are you required to submit credentials of any kind to participate to show that you're listed in the directory or anything?
It is not connected to the directory at all.
Woo-woo.
So the research team used a variety of methodology to find what they call the total population of farmers markets. And later on the process, they'll do more publishing of methodology, because one of the things that we really want to make sure is this is as transparent a process as possible, which previous iterations of the survey with others have not always been. And so, no, you don't have to show any credentials. It is not based on that directory. It's based on a combination of methods that also included a lot of hand looking up and verifying. Is that one really there? Is it still open, et cetera, et cetera. So they have created what they think is a national fairly vetted list that includes all of the U.S. states. Sadly, the last survey for some reason did not survey Hawaii and Alaska, who are very much included this time. And we're working to include U.S. territories as well for the first time.
That's awesome. I do know some people in Alaska that are still bitter about that.
Yes, I understand entirely why and agree with them. And so the survey actually is available in English and Spanish.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah.
What kind of questions are you going to be asking?
We're going to be asking everything from your organizational structure, your personnel, your size and scale of your market, because we know that for markets themselves, at least we always want to compare ourselves to sort of a like market, whether in our geography or elsewhere. What are the markets that are, by our size? How are they organized? How big are they? What are they doing? What's their market season looking like, et cetera? Volunteers, are we relying on volunteers and how many? What's the sort of personnel input overall? Right. But not, again, the details about salaries or things like that. We do ask about sources of revenue in the survey. So it's not getting at how much money, but, what are your primary sources of revenue? How are your vendor fees structured? Do you have vendor association fee or an application fee? So those basics of how you operate, again, mostly information that is publicly available, but is a lot more accurate if we could actually ask the people who manage it.
That's amazing. So after you collect the information, what's the output going to look like? And just wondering, is the survey going to reach conclusions based on weighing all of the answers equally? Do large organizations' answers count for more because they include more people? Is this an electoral college kind of thing where small markets get equal weight even though they involve less people?
I'm not on the analysis team, but I can tell you that they will be looking at, and what Dar and I give in the advisory group will give input into, or here's the things we care about. Like I personally care about that crosstab, so to speak, of small markets. So as a consultant, I work with the Michigan State Farmers Market Association to develop and conduct the census of farmers markets that some of you have probably seen or read about. And in doing so, when we were looking at all that raw data, deep dive data in that survey, we'd look at a result and the average, right? So imagine the average across markets of every age and every size, et cetera, didn't really tell us a lot. But, when you dive in to say, well, what's the new markets, how do they answer this, in terms of maybe it's their turnover of market managers or their scale, whatever it might be, or larger markets, smaller markets, rural markets, urban markets. So there'll be those sort of crosstabs. So no, it's not overweighted by the size of market in any way, shape, or form. But I think that the richness will come out of the results as we look at how geographies compare, how markets of different size, different age, different organizational structures, for-profit organizations versus nonprofits versus government-run markets, et cetera. So I think the richness will be in the details of how we compare some of those different factors that we'll get sort of throughout the survey, which is what we would call an analysis crosstabs.
Got it. So it sounds like you're kind of weighting everything somewhat equally. Are the answers from the sampling frame weighted more heavily, or do they affect the results in a different way than answers from just sort of the general farmers market manager population?
So that sample group will be analyzed sort of on their own, and they will draw some results from their own. And then the whole group will be analyzed as a whole. So there will be sort of two different sets of results. And I can't kind of tell you further because I'm not the research analyst on this project. But we will see a couple different things. And some, maybe the sample group may be more, scientifically generalizable, right? But that will get into sort of the methodology, and that will all come out as they publish, what analytical tools they use, et cetera.
And who is going to have access to the results of this survey once it's done? Like, participants get the final results when it's all kind of said and done and it shakes out, and then is this going to be publicized in any way so the general public can see it, or where's the information going?
Yeah, well, we've got a website that's at Michigan State that I'm sure you can share the URL from, that will be the place from start to finish. So it's there now. There's a FAQs. There are, as of today, actually, a lot of publicity materials. So people can use them to start spreading the word, particularly, say, state and network leaders can spread the word. There's social media things, PowerPoint slides that could be dropped into conferences coming up, a request to order actually printed materials. So we're trying to make it easy for people to do that. And all of those things are going live right now. And then that's where there'll be a link to enter the survey. And then that's where results will be as well. So anyone will be able to come see, again, those compiled results. You can't look at what your neighbor market wrote, of course. You will look at compiled results at regional levels, at the national level, and hopefully state levels, as much as we're able to release states, which I'm hoping we are able to release each state's data. And anyone will be able to access that data.
Yeah, I know the state leaders groups, the ones that run farmers market associations in the many states, I think we're up to almost 30 now, that have market associations, really want to see that state data compiled, state by state, so that they can see where their folks are coming from.
I think it's most important, and we stressed to this research team from the beginning, if there's not state data, this is useless. Yeah. And maybe that's overstating, but that we have stressed that over and over and over again. What we also did when we had a chance to give the research team input on the questions as well is did what we could to align them with the Farmers Market Coalition's new question bank and farmersmarketevaluation.org, which is a site and a project I work on as a consultant with Farmers Market Coalition. And so we're hoping that the sector, markets, individual markets, collections of markets, state organizations, et cetera, can start moving towards more common metrics where we can all use the same language. So on your, state organization may have the registration form, right? Or membership form or form someone fills out to be on their state association map of markets, et cetera. Can we all ask the same things in the same way? We ask plenty of similar things, right? So the Farmers Market Evaluation site is aiming to give us the tools and give market managers the tools so you could download these tools and edit them, et cetera. But back to this survey, they're not exactly aligned, but there were a number of questions we were able to give input on so that they could align. So we'll have national data, and then as states and individual markets start using these tools, then we'll be able to compare our own local data, our ongoing data between every 5 years or so with this national data, the more and more we can do this kind of alignment. So it's not the same exact survey, right? But it has a lot of similarities and some exact same wording to move us towards those common and shared metrics that let us better, again, compare, but also make the case for markets at all of these different scales from our individual markets all the way up to the national case for farmers markets and why we need grant programs and policy support and all of those things that we need.
So how do you think that this will benefit the farmers market sector as a whole? I mean, I think there's a lot of skepticism right this minute about, are we going to see grants anymore? We saw so many people hustle for FMPP deadlines, and they haven't heard a word since last fall. Are you seeing this as something long-term that will live through many administrations? Are you seeing this as something that actually could affect USDA's decisions nowadays?
I have no specific crystal ball around the federal government or USDA more than anyone, but this survey has happened for about 25 years. The first one was in 2000, and that has been through multiple different administrations of different views. So we're hoping, and I think that if we have a strong response rate, it will actually give us more chance to leverage resources through AMS, the Agricultural Marketing Service, who does this, which is very different from where the grants come out of, which is very, very different from FNS, where SNAP comes out of, et cetera. They are different behemoth kind of organizations upon themselves. But this will give us that chance to, again, do those deeper dive research questions. It is better to have data than not have data. I think it also, as we look for who else can fund markets when federal government isn't who we could rely on, that national data, that state level data, I think will be really crucial as we look towards other funding opportunities. And if I put my fundraiser hat on, both in foundations and that world, as well as sponsorships, et cetera, right? People want to know how many eyes, how many things, how do you compare to the others? How do you compare to the other people coming to me? So I think if we're thinking about the funding structure for farmers markets overall, having local to national data only makes us stronger and is in this environment more and more essential, no matter what happens and comes from the federal government.
And that's a terrific answer because that's exactly what we've been talking about all month. And we'll be continuing to talk about at the conferences that the prince is not coming. We need to take care of ourselves. Let's look at what we can do in terms of our own individual resources and the coalitions that we form with other markets around us and the larger groups to look for other ways to support ourselves and other ways to analyze what we need and to ask for it. Do you think that this is a survey, and I admit we're putting you on the spot as a crystal ball reader as opposed to a survey conductor, but I wonder if this will provide information for advocates that actually are still in Congress that love the idea of farmers markets and understand what economic engines they are and that how important they are to individual farmers. Do you think that this information will be kind of pointed towards them so that they can use that to advocate for us?
Yes, for sure. That is one primary audience, and the primary audience that AMS, beyond the farmers market sector in itself, is thinking about is how data can form some of those decisions. And we know Congress, in theory at least, is the one who approves funding programs, farm bills, which are overdue. Right, we have some big federal funding where these things, the programs that support markets are, and some right on the chopping block. So understanding better, right, to even just what seems like simple information, but understanding comprehensively what forms of currency people are accepting, right? And food assistance in particular. That's really important data that is not easily accessible, excuse me, comprehensively from FNS, for instance, because it's these programs are operated out of so many different entities. That in itself is if we knew nothing else, right? I like to think of surveys. If we knew nothing else, then that is a powerful piece of data for advocacy for these sort of programs. I think it's also powerful to be able to advocate because it's often higher capacity markets, which tend to be bigger markets or markets rooted in larger nonprofits, et cetera, are the ones who have the capacity and resources to do and collect this, have this data for themselves, right? Well, this is a national survey, and again, a kind of representative sample, randomized representative sample is selected, and everyone has a chance to take it. And so, if we can get strong representation from rural markets, from markets in red districts and blue districts and purple districts, et cetera, right, we can have better data to show how markets really are impacting communities of all types, producers, entrepreneurs of all types in all geographies. And I think in our current moment in time, that's particularly important. So it's not just that the big city market and the well-funded nonprofit has good data to advocate for themselves or go to DC with a coalition, but the small, tiny, rural market also has the data and how they compare and how they are part of a collective to advocate. I think that's really crucial to making the case.
Yeah, I think that you make a good point too. I think these markets kind of feel isolated, like they're the only ones doing this, or they're the only ones that are this size, or they're the only ones doing, A, B, or C kind of questions that you're asking on the survey. It can really help people feel like united and motivate them to maybe work together or to advocate more for themselves or just to be seen on that national level. I think that's really important for markets to just keep going and thriving where they are.
Yeah, we saw a piece that came up the other day about, okay, you can't accomplish this at the federal level, but can you convince your municipality to require that any new development have X amount of garden space allotted? And I think that got back to how you presented last year, Amanda. Yep. You made us all really aware of how much more power you have at the very local level than you might on a huge way up there level that seems to be influenced by a lot of other folks. So I think a survey like this, if that information's made available to those small markets, to those local municipalities, that could really help and see some significant change.
Mm-hmm. But we can also think about the other state audiences, right? We can think about the state departments of agriculture, departments of economic development, departments of health, et cetera. So as we look to them potentially more and more in terms of their support, their policy support, because it's not just about funding, right? It's about policies at every level, local to national, that don't inhibit markets, right? Because there are some of those, and that promote further, market development, market sustainability. And we have opportunities at every level of administrative policy and legislative policy, right? And administrative policy in this time can often be easier. And that's all that stuff that happens that behind the scenes, those government processes and decisions, et cetera, that don't need a legislative body to approve, but really affect our market's ability to operate or not operate, to do food demos or not, to have the license where that's relevant or not, right? All of those things are really consequential. And the more we have data about the sector, the more we can go to those folks who can help support or take away barriers to markets operating and thriving. And to me, data is one of those key ways we need to do that.
Yeah, I think that's helpful when just speaking about departments of health or ag, it's if you're coming to someone in the department and saying, hey, my market could really use this resource or this, rule is kind of a barrier here. They might say, oh, you're just one market. But when you say, oh, hey, I'm part of this larger group, look at this data set, there's a big group of us. I think it can just kind of empower you and deepen the conversation that you're having with these folks and really make some significant change too. And really kind of, it can make or break whether our market is going to survive a season or individual vendors at that market are going to make it through without barriers that are really like prohibitive to them doing business and commerce. So I think data sets is really helpful. I mean, even if you feel like if it's too broad or like too dialed in, too like kind of nitty gritty, anything you can do to show that you're kind of part of a bigger group or all farmers markets, I think is so helpful.
And from a financial perspective, I mean, a couple of things, get at the like revenue sources, right? So to be able to, you're a market and you're trying to figure out how you're going to grow, and you see that there are markets that are your scale or your age or your organizational structure, say sponsorships are in their top 3, and you need to make a case to the marketing team at your municipality to help find some sponsorships for your market, that is the norm, or that you're being paid as a stipend versus a wage, or some of these basic structural things. Knowing what other markets do is really important. I found to being able to make that advocate for our own local change, even within your own market operating entity.
Yeah, completely makes sense. Mm-hmm. What didn't we ask you that we should have, Amanda?
I don't know why I love data.
How'd you become a data fan?
So our market, Ypsilanti Farmers Market that Growing Hope, my former organization, ran, we did a lot more than you should. We asked more surveys and longer surveys, et cetera, that are the best practices or that I would necessarily recommend to others. But we made that a norm from the beginning, and we saw the power of what that meant to grow our little market, right? Back in the day, vendors were skeptical, not having ever done Snap at Market, how it would affect their sales. But because we required sales from day one, we have a powerful data set that helped us recruit other vendors, that vendors recruited other vendors because they saw that we not only collected a lot of data, but that we used it to make decisions to make the market more successful for them and for us, right? But we also collected data that helped us understand our impact in a different way than the way we knew it by feeling it, right? We're doing this work and we can feel see and feel what the impact is. And storytelling is a really important part of evaluation data as well. But we were able to share from our customer surveys that our median income of our customers was actually lower than our community median income, right? And food access was a primary goal for us. And our median household income at that time, this is a while ago now, of our city was like $33,000 a year, very low and about half of what Ann Arbor next door to us is. And our median household income of market shoppers was $25,000 or so a year. I don't remember the exact number. That shows you, and honestly, that then can communicate to people you're fundraising with, et cetera, that you really are reaching, right? With the criticisms of market just being elite as for the elite, et cetera, like I knew in my gut and from being at markets every week that that's not what the case was, but to be able to make that case in a really solid financial, in a solid way that showed the numbers that you couldn't dispute was really powerful for our own validation, but also, again, then being able to garner that support we needed in other ways as well. So seeing and feeling and using data to make good decisions and seeing that help our market grow, I think made me sold. Like especially when, and this is a one-time survey that should take you 30 minutes or less, but when you incorporate the kind of tools that Farmers Market Coalition has been creating into your everyday, it's not like, oh, right, I've been meaning to get to that survey at the end of my season, right? Oh, right, I'm supposed to do some evaluation. That's something I'm supposed to do. When am I going to get to this amidst like my job as a market manager? This is about like basic things that you can do that don't take that long that you incorporate in and then makes like you have it all. You probably have a lot more data than you expect already just from your vendor applications, right? That is data. You are collecting data all the time in different ways. And so to get people's head around thinking how they're already doing it, and then they can easily, without a PhD degree and some research partner, et cetera, do more of that and then use it for both sort of, again, internal management as well as external advocacy and storytelling, then we can do so much more as a sector. So I don't know, maybe that's why I love data.
Oh, you do such a good job of explaining that. And I think people are intimidated by the idea of data collection. And when they hear your affection for it, are y'all encouraged out there to jump on in?
I'm starting to like data now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, you're a convert?
I'm converted.
I love it.
Yeah.
We will be seeing you at Intense in not that many weeks, just a few weeks. So we're very excited to do that. I know that people got so much out of your presentation last year. I expect they will again this year. And also meeting you in the hall and seeing what kind of fruit and vegetable clothing you might turn up in.
I've been thinking about that as I've been looking at my wardrobe. I was like, the bar is high.
It is. It's a tough crowd there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Amanda.
Thanks,
Hey,
Amanda.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
See you soon.
Yeah, can't wait to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Square for helping farmers market managers and participants track a variety of data, increase their income and reduce their stress, and for supporting Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Tent Talk podcast. To sign up for easy credit card processing on-site at markets and simple invoicing back at your desk, just click the Square logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in for another great episode.